Welcome to Germantown, Tennessee in Millstone Market and Nursery, where it's July, the heat is 110 index, temperature 95 degrees, humidity 100%. But we're going to be dreaming of cooler weather, and we're going to show you how to make your Easter resurrection garden. So, we have chosen our container. We chose something lightweight, but also large enough that where we can put in our whole entire resurrection garden. We're going to line our wooden box with this florist foil to keep the box from getting wet. We're going to plant our resurrection garden as we would any other container. Even though this will not have a drain hole, it will not drain because we want to be able to use this inside. So we want to be able to protect your furniture or your table. We're going to go ahead and use this, and then we're going to go ahead and line our container with gravel. Anytime you're planting a container, you do want to do a nice layer of gravel for drainage. So we're going to line our container with gravel. It's about a 1-inch layer of pea gravel. And then we're going to use our good pre-fertilized potting soil. We're going to use a very loose potting soil so our bedding plants will have room for their roots to spread and for good drainage. When planting your resurrection garden, you want to think in terms of planting your landscape. You'll have a focal point, and then you'll also be planting foliage, so you want to go from low to high. Our focal point is going to be the risen tomb, the empty tomb. Okay, so the empty tomb will be our focal point. So you want to take into consideration, in your mind you want to think, I'm going to be planting from low to high, but this will be my focal point. So I'm going to place it right in the center. And then my plant material, I always like to use something that has a little bit of drama to it that can go up and over and cascade over my tomb. So we're going to use this mahogany fern. I like the way this is going to drape. This one frond goes up. It's going to be perfect up and over our tomb. Next, the next tallest plant material that I'm going to be using is this ajuga. Even though this is still a green material, the greens contrast each other nicely. This ajuga tends to have a thick, shiny leaf. The growth habit is low, and I like the way that the blooms will cascade over the sides of our container. So we have framed our focal point with our plant material. So to give continuity, I want to bulk up the same plant material. So I'm going to choose another of the same ajuga. This one is Princess Nadia. And it gets this beautiful blue bloom in the spring. Feel free to go ahead and clean up the foliage. If you have any yellowing leaves or damaged foliage, just feel free to go ahead and pinch those off. We're planting low to high, and I'll go ahead and place this one right in here. We're still going from low to high. We're putting in our largest plant materials first. We've already highlighted our focal point, which is our tomb. And I always like to add some color. You cannot find anything sweeter than a miniature rose. The size of the blossom, the size of the foliage is perfect to go with our resurrection garden. The scale and the size is in keeping with our overall planting scheme. I love the softness of these ferns. And we'll use these. They're a little smaller than the roses. We'll put these right in here. I love the contrast between the fronds of the ferns and the contrast with the foliage of the roses. Then we're going to take our salginilla. I love the chartreuse green of our salginilla against the fronds of the ferns and the roses and the ajuga. Even though all of this plant material is what you consider green, you can get beautiful contrast in green just with the foliage and the texture. Now, we have low to high with plant material. We have our focal point, which is our tomb. And we have our drama with the frond that's going up and over our tomb. Now we need to create the entrance. And the way you do that is, we're going to use this with a small pea gravel. We'll fill the tomb, create our entrance right in here. At the end of our constructing this garden, you will not want to see any of the mechanics. You won't want to see any soil. You will not want to see our clay pot. Everything will be covered with either the moss, the plant material, or the gravel. So we're going to add our variegated ajuga. That gives us a nice texture against the green. So now we're going to tighten everything up with our sheet moss. To get this sheet moss to work for you, this has been harvested. This will not continue to grow. It will stay green as long as we keep it out of the sun. All of the plants that we are using right here are part sun, except for our roses. They will need a little bit more sun, but we're just gonna go with it. They'll last, they'll probably stay in bloom. There are a lot of buds on here for another month to 6 weeks, but once Easter is over, we can take the roses out, put them in a sunny location on our patios, and then put in a more shade-tolerant blooming plant. So, to get the sheet moss to work for you, what you'll want to do is go ahead and take the sheet moss and soak it in water. Once you soak it in water, you just wring it out like a sponge, and that makes the sheet moss more pliable. We have pre-soaked all of this moss, so now what we're going to do is we're going to place our moss in our resurrection garden, and then it's just going to tighten up our entrance into the tomb. It'll hide all of our soil. And remember I told you about the green liner that we put in here? Right here, the green liner that's going to keep the moisture and the water off of our wooden container. Now is the time where we're going to be covering that up. That's part of our mechanics. And remember, you do not want to see any of the mechanics. Okay, so now that we have all of our plants in place and we have our path, we're going to start adding our stones. This will really give it the realistic look for the resurrection garden. This is the stone that represents the stone that was rolled away. Then we'll add some other stones to give it that rocky, natural terrain feel. Do not be afraid to place these stones up into your foliage. It will not hurt anything. And then we'll add some loose wood pieces. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to incorporate our crosses. You'll have the tallest cross for Jesus and the two smaller crosses for the thieves. To get these to stand up and not shift around in the soil, since my container is not very deep and the soil is super porous and soft, I'm going to cut a little piece of oasis. I'm going to place the oasis in the back of my garden right here, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and place my crosses in the oasis. I'll just put in the tallest cross here, situate it right under our framing of our frond, and then we'll put in the two shorter crosses. And I really think the emphasis is driven home when the crosses come up right behind the empty tomb. So we have the three crosses that are made from just sticks that we got out of the yard, and I will cover those with moss as well. So once I have this all covered up with moss, I have all of my plants in place. Now you'll see the foil. I wanted to make sure that the foil covered all of my mechanics, because when I water, this is what's going to keep my container from getting wet. Since my container is wooden and it is porous, so I didn't want it to seep water on your table, I'm going to go ahead now and then just fold it back to the very edge and then just tuck it right under my moss so you'll not see it. Okay, so now we have this all planted. We have the entrance to our tomb. We're going to add a few more. Now that we have everything in place, we'll add a few more large stones for emphasis. just to give you that naturalistic look. You're not gonna hurt your plants by setting the stones right on top of the leaves, but it just really brings on a nice touch to finish our gardens. Okay, so our resurrection garden is all done. So if we're having, say we're having a little company and we wanted to dress this garden up, we have these glass water picks. And these water picks are the same idea as flower tubes, but these are designed to be seen. So what we'll do is we'll insert some few flower tubes. I've already filled these with water. We'll place these in our garden. We want to celebrate the risen tomb, the empty tomb. We'll switch that out for a taller one. They come in two different sizes. So I'll put a short one back here, and then we'll put a tall one in here. These have very sharp points. They're really easy to stick into the soil. And then we will take our phlox. This is just white garden phlox. We'll take our phlox, strip the foliage, and then just add them into our garden to add a little touch of beauty. Strip the leaves, and then just add our garden phlox. These flower tubes, they hold just enough water. If you have a really thirsty flower, you'll probably, if you're doing this the day before, will need to check the water in your flower tubes before the party the next morning, before your get together. But anyway, that's your resurrection garden.